This is everything you need to know to get started making killer videos for your business this year. I'm sure we've all heard that YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world after Google. But how big is video really? Today, video makes up over 82% of all internet traffic, and that number is rising. This means if you're not using video, you're only reaching 18% of total traffic online. When watching a video, viewers on average retain 95% of the video's message, whereas with text, that number is only about 10%. This makes video 9.5 times as effective in sharing information. Are you starting to get a sense of just how powerful video is? Good. Now let's do something with that power. What makes some videos super successful and some completely flop? Well, it comes down to knowledge and intention. In this video, I've broken down the video making process into 6 essential steps. This is a guide that not only can help get you started, but also if you do make videos and they aren't performing, you can come back to this and look through it and figure out where the issue is. So let's get into step 1, which is figure out your why and your who. This is by far the biggest mistake that I see marketers make when they start creating video content. In other words, you want to solidify your goals and your audience. Why did you want to make videos in the first place? And who are they for? What purpose are they serving to those people? The first thing that you should be asking yourself is, how can I bring value to someone else? Here, it really helps to have a very clear idea of your ideal customer. If you don't know why you're doing something or who it's for, it's pointless to make it in the first place. Don't just make videos about your business or about your products. Really get in the minds of your audience. What do they need? And how can I serve that? Not how can I serve myself? How can I serve my customers better by creating content that solves a problem for them? Figuring out the answers to these questions are going to guide every other decision in this process. Step 2, determine what types of videos you want to make. As you'll start to see throughout this video, the answer to this question gets a lot easier if you've answered step 1. Now that you know who you're making the videos for and why you're making them, the type of video will probably naturally come out through that. A good question to ask yourself here is, what makes my customers buy? Is it emotion or is it logic? And the answer to that question will dictate what types of videos you want to make. Maybe if it's logic, you want to make more explainer videos. Or if your customers or clients' needs are more emotional, then maybe you want to tell a story, take them along a journey. Maybe your business is a little more lighthearted, or maybe you also just don't have people who want to be on camera and you want to make more of an animated explainer video. If you do want to go the route of kind of like these animated videos, the 2 softwares that I would recommend to get started are Adobe Animate and Animaker. I've heard good things about both of them. Adobe is nice because it's in the full Adobe suite, so if you end up just using that for everything, for Photoshop and video editing and stuff, that will be included. That's what I use. Animaker is a separate software that I've heard really good things about. How do you want your company to be viewed? Do you want to be the expert or more of an everyday user? I've heard this compared to being the Superman or the Clark Kent. And once you've thought through all that, how are these videos going to contribute to your overall company goal? Are they going to drive referrals or drive customers? Are they going to turn cold traffic into leads? And that can change video to video, of course. And the last question in this section is, do you want to post long form or short form content? In other words, like YouTube videos or TikTok videos. And again, this is going to depend on your audience, so I really hope you did your homework in step 1, because knowing where your audience lives, that's going to tell you where you should put the videos. And if you don't know right away, that's okay. You can try some different things, post on different platforms, see how they perform, and then come back in a few months and say, okay, our videos are doing really well on TikTok, or they're doing really well on LinkedIn, or maybe they're getting a lot of views on Facebook Reels, but they're not converting into anything beneficial. A good example of this step is, let's say you are a real estate agent, deciding that you want to make explainer videos for first-time home buyers, breaking down the process of buying a house. It clearly contributes towards your goal, which is getting more clients. It provides clear value for your clients, and it positions you as an expert in your field. This is where a lot of your intention comes into play. You remember at the beginning I said the biggest difference between whether videos perform or not is knowledge and intention. You're getting the knowledge through this video. This step and step 1 are what combined makes your intention. Having reasons behind your videos is going to set you miles apart from your competition. I promise you. Step number 3 is come up with a distribution plan. This really means where is your video going to live and when is it going to go live? And this is also very important to do before filming because different platforms have different needs. I would recommend starting with maybe 2 or 3 where you could share the same video, like YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook all have the same aspect ratio. And remember, different platforms have different audiences. Someone on YouTube is going to have a very different intention being online than someone who's on LinkedIn. Someone on LinkedIn is probably going to be online more during business hours, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, whereas someone on YouTube isn't necessarily there for professional content. They may stumble across it or they might be doing a search, but because YouTube is so vast, you are going to have such a variety of people, whereas LinkedIn has much more of a niche audience. Here is a good time where if you have posted on social media in the past, you've been doing it for years, or you just kind of posted things here and there, now is a great time to do what's called a content audit, where you go back and look at your previous content, see what's performed the best, so that you know where your audience lives and what provides the most value to them. A good example of this is deciding that you're going to post on your company's social media accounts 10 a.m. on Thursday the 11th, and saying after that we're going to support the video with an email blast, and then we're going to follow it up with more infographics the following week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, to support the video and drive more traffic. That is a very detailed example, but it shows you what kind of things you should be thinking about before you even write anything. And that leads me into step 4. Write the video. So now that you know your audience, you know your intentions, you know where the video is going to live, and you have a plan for all of that, now it's time for the good stuff. And step 1, when it comes to writing the video, is actually creating your title. I know that might seem backwards, but genuinely when it comes to video content, your title and your thumbnail are your packaging. This is what the vast majority of people are going to see. So you want the highest number of those people to click on your video. And the way to do that is to create a killer title. A good way to think about your title is, what is your hook point? A hook point is something that will make your audience stop in their tracks and say, wait, what? That comes from the book Hook Point by Brendan Kane, which I am just about to finish listening to on Audible. I would highly recommend it. I'll link it down below for anyone who's interested. But a hook point is what is going to bring people into your video. And hook points are not a new concept. It's a new way of saying something that's been around forever. Think of magazine headlines, blog post titles, article headlines. Even email subject lines are a form of a hook point. If you've done marketing at all before, you know what a hook point is, even if you don't have the exact verbiage for it. And a hook point is the biggest key to getting people to your video. And hooks can be a lot of different things. It can be a celebrity for brands like Nike. It can be a unique selling proposition. It can be something that's never been done before. The best examples of great hook points today are Mr. Beast videos. If you've ever seen anything Mr. Beast has made, you'd know what I'm talking about. Mr. Beast is the king of video content on YouTube right now. And the reason is, he does crazy things in his videos. He does things that have never been done, and his titles in the first 5 seconds of the video tell you that exactly. For instance, let's look at his most recent videos right now. I spent 7 days in solitary confinement. I rescued 100 abandoned dogs. Survive 100 days trapped, win $500,000. $10,000 every day you survive in a grocery store. And do you see the views on those videos? It's because he consistently does things that have never been done before, things that have never been thought about before, and he frames them in such an incredible way that you can't help but watch. I mean, I want to pause filming right now just to watch like 3 of these. So here's some tips for creating great titles that force people to watch your content. The best titles have curiosity and intrigue, shock, direct benefit, implied benefit, fear or vanity, and self-interest, i.e. better, richer, healthier, sexier, more productive. And those come from the book Sell Like Crazy. It's the first book that I had ever read on digital marketing, and it really breaks the process down. It's a little more about like funnels and paid advertising versus organic content, but the concepts apply to really any type of video content as well. So really what you're trying to do here is give your audience a reason to click on the video. You want the title to convey exactly what you're going to do in the video in a way that forces them to want to watch it. When it comes to thumbnails, YouTube really is the platform that it matters the most on. That's not to say that it's not relevant on things like LinkedIn and Facebook, but YouTube's algorithm specifically does take into consideration your thumbnails, and the audience really reacts differently to different types of thumbnails. If you want to learn more about thumbnails specifically, I would highly recommend this video from April and Alter. The video is called How to Make a Killer Thumbnail to Blow Up Your Channel. This is a 30-minute deep dive into the psychology and the trends and the algorithm that impacts how to make the best thumbnail possible for YouTube. While we're here, let's look at this title because it's fantastic. You can see it has a clear, direct benefit that the audience is understanding before ever clicking on the video. The title shows a direct and clear benefit to the viewer that also draws on your curiosity and self-interest. This is where I would really recommend checking out some people that you really like to watch online and taking a look at their titles, their thumbnails, how they package their content to get an idea of all the different types of hook points that can be used. After your title and thumbnail, the first 5 to 30 seconds are going to be the most important part of the video itself. But we're not going to get to that just yet, because what we want to do now is actually write the video. And this is going to look totally different depending on your industry, depending on your own workflow, depending on what makes sense for you as a creator or your business as a whole. For instance, I've worked with a lot of people who aren't super comfortable on camera, but have to give a lot of presentations for work. So what they've done is just create a PowerPoint for the shoot itself, and that gives them something to kind of reference and work off of throughout the video, where they don't have to feel like they're reading something from a teleprompter or they have to get it right word for word. You know, it just has core concepts that they can work off of, but it still gives them a structure to follow. So once you've got the core of the video written, you can go back to the beginning and write out that first 5 to 30 seconds. One of the most important things here is making sure that right at the beginning, you are meeting your audience's expectations that you've set. So with the title and the thumbnail possibly that you've created, you've set some expectations for the video. You want to make sure right away people know that they are going to get what they're expecting. For instance, at the beginning of this video, I reiterated the title in slightly different words, so you knew that exactly what you clicked on you were about to get. All right, now that we've got everything written down, we can move on to step 5, creating the video. And this is the type of content that I'm going to be creating much more on in the future and going more in depth on a lot of the things that I talk about. So if you're interested in learning more about that, definitely hit subscribe, stick around. If you're watching this in the future, go check out what stuff has been posted since then. But for now, I'm going to try to give a really nice high-level overview of the whole video creation process. And to do that, I've broken it down into 3 steps: pre-production, filming or production, and post-production. So let's get started with pre-production. One nice thing is we've actually kind of been doing pre-production this whole time. Writing out the video, planning your video, all of that is part of your pre-production process. Another part of it though is your equipment. This is something that so many people have questions on, especially when they're just getting started out. What kind of camera should I buy? Can I use my phone? You know, what should my lighting setup be? So if you have a good quality phone with a nice camera like an iPhone or a new Samsung, you can probably get away with filming on that for a little while, but down the road you'll probably want to upgrade. If you're curious what I use, I'm going to link my whole setup down below so you can see everything and the links to buy it all if you like how this looks, or maybe just don't want to think so much about it, because I have done a lot of research on this stuff. But the point being, you don't have to spend a fortune out of pocket to get started. If you don't want to buy a bunch of equipment right off the bat, you could also rent equipment to get started. That's definitely something I would recommend if you want a higher production quality, or if you're just not sure if buying equipment is right for you, it might make sense to rent some equipment to get started. There's probably some local rental shops that you could use. I have used online rental companies in the past and been pretty happy with the experience. I've done a little digging and it seems like BorrowLens is a pretty well liked online rental company, so I'll link them down below if you want to check that out. But you can also go to a local rental shop, or there are other online companies. That's just the one that seemed to be the best from everything that I've learned. The last thing you could do is just buy a camera. As I said, you don't need to get it right away, but if you are serious about creating content for your business, you need to buy a camera at some point. Having a camera will really allow you to upgrade your content in a way that you just can't do with a phone. So when it comes to camera specifics, if you're buying a camera online, just make sure that you are getting a body and a lens. This unfortunately is something that I see so often with people who are getting started. They don't realize that they're just buying the body with no lens, and then it gets there and they're all excited and they open it up and it's just got this giant hole in the middle of it. So make sure that you get a lens and a body, and make sure that they are compatible. So if you get a Sony camera, get a Sony lens. But I can't tell you exactly what camera to buy or what it makes the most sense for you. I would maybe do some research, see what other people have said. The first thing that I would say, honestly, is set your budget. Figure out how much you want to spend, because you can spend as much as you want on a camera. You could spend $200, you could spend $200,000. They all exist and they're all going to serve a different purpose. So I would say set your budget first and then look at what cameras are in your budget. Next is audio. Audio is very, very important and very often overlooked. What I would say when getting started out is you can use the built-in camera or phone microphone. Those are pretty good. Down the line, I would highly recommend upgrading to either a shotgun microphone or a lavalier microphone. Let's go back and listen to that last shot and compare the built-in microphone versus the lavalier microphone. But down the line, I would highly recommend upgrading to either a shotgun microphone or a lavalier microphone. But down the line, I would highly recommend upgrading to either a shotgun microphone or a lavalier microphone. And if you're curious what I'm using right now, I'm using both. And that's something else I want to talk about, especially at the beginning, but honestly always. I would recommend having 2 different forms of audio recording at all times, because you never want to get home and look at the footage and realize the microphone wasn't on. It was super windy and the audio was blown out. I have had way too many circumstances where I get back and one form of audio is corrupted or hard to hear and takes so much editing. And I would say just save yourself the time. Something that I do really often is I will film with my camera with the attached shotgun microphone, and then I'll take my phone and set it close to wherever the audio is coming from. So if someone's up on stage, I'll just set it on the little booth with them so that as they're talking, I'm getting a recording on my phone. And that's just my fail-safe, just in case anything happens with the shotgun mic. And you really just never know. That is a good way to safeguard yourself. Next is lighting. Lighting can get really complex, but it doesn't need to be. In school, we learned everything on a 3-point lighting system, which is your key light, your fill light, and your backlight. You can see a little bit of all of them right here. I'm kind of blending my key and my fill because I have a big softbox light right there that's kind of far away, that's just lighting the whole set. And then I have a ring light right here that's being my fill light on my face so that I stand out from the rest of the set. And then I have 2 light sources over here. They are purple light, but they are still illuminating the backdrop so that I stand out from it, but it's not completely dark and the camera's not freaking out. So that's a quick little lesson on lighting. But really, you don't need anything fancy to get started. If you have a window that has good daylight, use that. If you have overhead lights that don't wash you out and look crazy, use that. That's fine, and it's going to depend on your location, on your circumstance, on how much you want to spend, all these things. But if you do want to spend money on lighting, I would recommend a couple things. One is you can get a little studio light kit on Amazon for pretty cheap. It's not too bad. I've bought 2 of these sets and been pretty happy. They've lasted a long time, and they come with several lights, so you can light differently depending on your need. The other thing I'd recommend is a ring light. Ring lights kind of get a bad rap because of like TikTok and YouTubers maybe overusing them, but honestly, they're just great quality lights that really do make you look good. Just make sure to not show it in the frame. Like I found my frame line over here. This is where my light is, so it's just out of frame. Just make sure that it's not in the frame and you're gonna be totally fine. One thing to know about most of these lighting setups though is usually the cords are very short. So make sure that you have extension cords and power strips at the ready, especially if you're shooting on location. It can get really difficult. So make sure you have a power source that's pretty close to your light. The last thing is your computer and your hard drive. Now the hard drive, I would highly recommend getting an external hard drive if you're gonna be serious about making videos. This is for a lot of reasons. One, because you're just gonna shoot a massive amount of content, way more than you realize you're going to. For instance, today I'm gonna be shooting probably about an hour and a half in total, and I am shooting in 4K with one camera. And that's probably going to end up being somewhere close to 50, 60 gigs. And some of these computers are only like 120 gigs, so one day of shooting could completely cover your hard drive. So that helps with organization, longevity, but it also helps with your editing. And I'll get back to that in a little bit when we talk about editing, but having an external hard drive is really helpful. But if you're gonna get an external hard drive and use it for editing, make sure that you get a good one. This is a lesson that took me a while to learn, unfortunately. I remember being told it in school, but it went in one ear and out the other. But a lot of these editing softwares, like I know Premiere, which I use, is going to pull footage directly from the hard drive, so your computer has to communicate with the hard drive at all times. So you need a hard drive that has a good read-write speed. That's gonna sound super technical, don't worry about it. I'll link the ones that I recommend down below that have really good read-write speed so you don't have to worry about it. I built my last desktop that I worked off of for a few years, and I made sure to put a ton of RAM in it so that it edits really well. And I was getting really frustrated because I was like, I know this computer inside and out, I built it. Why is it not editing well? Why does Premiere keep freezing? Is it Premiere? I talked to Adobe support several times and they're like, everything looks fine. What I figured out was I had a cheap hard drive that was bottlenecking the whole process. So I wouldn't say that a hard drive is absolutely necessary right away, depending on what you're doing, but I would definitely recommend it at some point and make sure to get a good one. Now on to the fun part, filming. Now, how exactly to film your video is going to depend on the type of content you make, the location you're in, all the things I've already said 100 times. So like if you're in a factory, you might have to shoot this big wide shot to get all the machines in. If you're filming a 3D printer, you're gonna have to get in really close and your face probably can't be in it. If you are filming on location, so like not in a studio, not at a desk, not just a talking head video like this, make sure to get B-roll. B-roll is footage that supports your main narrative. So for example, in this video, I've cut away to a lot of different footage throughout this. That's all B-roll. So let's say you're at a machine shop. You're in this warehouse, you're talking about this particular machine and all the features and benefits of it. You're gonna want a lot of footage of the inside of that machine, the outside of the machine, everything relating to it. Make sure if you talk about something, you have footage of it. This is the #1 thing that drives me crazy as a video viewer. If you are talking about something and I'm not seeing it on the screen, I don't know what's going on. I'm a visual person, I'm a filmmaker, I'm not the best at conceptual thinking. I want to see exactly what is happening in front of me. When you're getting started, it's really helpful to have a very simple background and a very clear subject. Something that I heard once, and I don't remember if it was from a professor or a YouTube video, but I really liked it. And it was, if you can't pause a video and know exactly what it's about with the image and the title, you've done something wrong. Those two are gonna work together to create a very clear narrative. And this again is why we made the title first, so that everything else can support it. If your video is about the best tips to catch salmon, but you're sitting in a warehouse, it's not gonna make any sense. Make sure that your set supports your video. And again, with your lighting, you want to serve this as well. What is the subject of your frame? So for example, right here, I am the subject of the frame. It's not the computer, it's not my nightstand, it's not the sign, it's not the plant, it's me. I am the person talking, I am the subject of the video. My lighting reflects that. As I've already said, I have my key light covering the whole set, and then I have a ring light filling me specifically so that I stand out. Now, when it comes to audio, when you're getting started, you really don't need to know much other than make sure you're recording. But the biggest thing that you can do right away to improve your audio content is reduce as much background noise as possible. And when you start to do this, you kind of can't stop. You get very fixated on all the sounds happening. For instance, today I'm filming in my studio, which is in my basement, right next to the furnace. So the whole time that I'm filming, I just turned off the heat, because I know every 20-30 minutes or whatever, that thing's gonna kick on and it's gonna change my audio. Even if it's not super loud, it's going to change it. So if I ever cut, you will know. And that's not what you want. And even earlier when I was filming, I got really confused because something turned on and I knew that I had turned off the furnace. This lesson will come up in a few minutes. I thought I turned the furnace off. Yeah, it's off. Is that the ice maker? Now, if you really want to be intentional about this and you are shooting somewhere that has a lot of background noise, don't just accept it right away. I've shot in really big factories and I've had to go up to people and say, look, I'm really sorry, but could you shut that off for like 10 minutes? And they might not be happy, but if I'm getting paid to make the best video that I can and their boss knows and they're bringing me in to do that, I'm gonna do my job the best that I can. And that means getting the best audio possible. It might be a little uncomfortable at the beginning if you have to ask someone to stop doing something or do something differently, but I promise you it's gonna be worth it in the long run. And the more you do it, the more you realize it's not personal at all. I'm just trying to record something, you're making a noise. I don't have any negative feelings towards you as a person. Please stop so I can get better audio. That's all it is. Now on to my favorite part, editing. I am primarily a video editor, even though I do it all, that is really where my niche is. I'll share with you some tips that I've learned and tricks that you can do to get better at video editing right away, but it really is a skill that you learn by doing. So when it comes to editing, the first thing you need is a software. The big three are Adobe Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, and Final Cut. Now, when it comes to these big three, I really think it's more of a big two between Premiere and Resolve. Final Cut isn't quite in the same league as the other two, in my opinion, just because it's only for Macs, and I've seen people kind of wean off of it in the last few years. When it comes to what software to use, that's totally up to you. I personally use Premiere. That's what I learned in school. It's what I've been using for many years now. I know it very, very well. I'm very efficient with it. I also use many other Adobe products, so it's really helpful to just have the whole suite every month. And I know I can use After Effects, I can use Photoshop, I can use Lightroom, and I don't have to worry about that. Resolve, I haven't used personally, but I have a lot of friends who use it. I have someone I know who just switched from Premiere to Resolve and seems to like it. It's totally a matter of personal preference and opinion. In reality, they're all pretty similar and interchangeable. They have very similar interfaces, they do very similar things. It's just what makes the most sense for you. Now, those are paid softwares, but there are some free apps that you can use to get started. First off, DaVinci Resolve does have a free version. I don't know what they took out of the main software to make it free. I haven't used that personally, but it seems to be pretty good. I've seen a lot of people say that is the #1 choice if you're going to use a free video editing software. Another honorable mention is CapCut. I've seen a lot of people who have tried that and liked it, and it seems to do the job if you're not trying to do anything too complex. Now, we've talked about the first 5 to 45 seconds of the video and how important it is to get it right. Your editing is where you're going to serve that. One of the biggest mistakes that I see companies do when they create video content is they start their video with a logo or an intro. Please do not do that. Unless you have a very loyal audience, you're gonna lose so many people that you worked so hard to bring in. Especially if your goal is to get a lot of views and bring in cold traffic, they probably don't care about your brand. All you're doing is building more time between them and the end result. Statistically, you lose so many people in the first 5 seconds of a video anyway. When you start with a logo, that number plummets even more. Now, you remember that I said film in 4K. The reason is you will export the video at 1080p, which is half the size of 4K. So what that means is that you can cut in on a 4K video 2 times without losing any quality. Now, what that does for you is that lets you cut out your mistakes. So with this video, I'm usually behind the camera. I'm not super comfortable in front of the camera. So I know I'm gonna be using my notes a lot, and I'm gonna need a lot of time to cut back and forth. So filming in 4K means I can say my sentence, I can get it perfect, and then I can do this. And then I can cut to my next point. You can also do this with B-roll if you maybe don't have the capacity to film in 4K, or really you don't want to use one technique too much. So having B-roll is a good way to smooth things out. And like I said earlier, if you're talking about something, you want a visual representation on the screen so much of the time. A couple years ago, I had filmed a show and was pitching it to Fox Video, and I was meeting with one of the creative curators over there. And he looked back at my footage and he said, "This is great. The editing needs to be 10 times more." And I was like, I put so much editing into that. And he said, the problem isn't the editing, the problem is how much we saw the person on screen. So he gave me a task. He said, I want you to use all B-roll and only cut back to your subject when you're trying to make a really significant point. And that might seem like a lot to get started. And to be fair, it is. I mean, editing is a lot of work. There's a lot that goes into it. But it can also be a relief if you're the one in front of the camera, because you know, I don't have to get this right. I don't have to do this in one take over 5 minutes. I can film for 2 hours and take the best 10 minutes of it. Another thing that you can do to really emphasize your points is, just like the last thing I said, if you want to really point out something significant, lower the audio. Did you notice how right there the music kind of dipped and then it swelled back up? That's because I really, really wanted you to pay attention to what I was saying. When you cut in and you lower the music or you cut it out completely, you've got someone's attention. Something similar to filming in 4K is filming with 2 cameras. So this way you could get 2 different angles. You can cut away from your main camera to your second camera, and your second camera might be a little more zoomed in. For example, when I do interviews, I always do at least a 2 camera setup. That way I can get a main shot and then a close-up for when they say something really important. Now, if you're not going to be using narration or voiceover or have a talking head, maybe you want to go more the musical route. Now, remember way back in step 2 when I said, what makes your customers buy? Is it logic or emotion? Make sure that your editing reflects that as well. So for instance, music is very emotional. How music can be used in editing creates a specific emotional reaction from your audience. I've made so many videos throughout my career that don't even have any voiceover, any words at all. It's just music. And if you decided that you don't need or don't want to talk or have any voiceover in your video, you can have a video of all music. That's totally fine. And if you go this route, I would recommend editing to the music. And what that means is really feeling the emotional swells and dips in the music and matching that to your video content. You know, you might want to start the video on kind of a high note, very punchy, very energetic, and then kind of lull them in as you maybe talk about the specific features or benefits of your product. And then as the music swells, maybe you get a little more emotional. Maybe you see a family spending time together because your product saves them time. Maybe at the end of this, there's a really nice swell that kind of fades out, and that's where you hit your final selling point of the video. That is how you edit to the music. You use it to serve your greater purpose. Now, another really important thing under the umbrella of editing is your creative tools. These I categorize differently than your editing software because the software just has a very specific purpose of translating that footage. Your tools are really how you can go above and beyond and create different, unique content. Personally, I love Envato. I think Envato Elements is like the greatest creator tool ever made. I've been using it for almost exactly 3 years now. I always get my yearly subscription. I think it is so good. And I really like Envato because it's a one-stop shop, so I don't have to have a bunch of different services and subscriptions. So it has video templates that can help you make really, really good looking videos without really having a lot of experience. It has stock images and stock footage that you can use for your videos, so you don't have to pay a separate subscription for that. And it has music included with your service as well, which I have found to be very difficult to find good quality, inexpensive music online. So for this, I can justify the cost every year from the music alone. Envato also has lower thirds, graphic elements, pop-ups, anything like that that can really kind of dress the video up and make it look a little more put together, a little more professional without having to have a ton of experience. All right, that's my 2 cents on Envato. I just absolutely love the service. Now, there are a lot of other really good services out there that cost very little or cost no money. They are a little more piecemeal, but I'll go through some of my favorite ones. Canva, I'm sure a lot of you know, is a very good, easy to use, creative service that lets you create really nice looking pictures and short little videos to put out on social media. Canva is very user friendly. I really do like it because you don't need any design skills to just drag and drop, and they have some really great templates on there. Now, Canva does have a paid and free version, totally up to you. It just depends on how often you're going to be using it and if you want the full suite of content, which I will say it's really nice when I have the paid version and I don't have to worry about what I'm using. I just know it's all usable. Some great options for stock images and stock footage are Pexels and Pixabay. I've used these a lot the last few years. They do have some pretty good content and it's all free. So just like with everything else, if you want to start with the free versions, those are my recommendations for that. And then when it comes to audio, like I was saying, it can be really difficult to find a good music service. For me, the best thing that I have found, honestly, is the YouTube audio library, which if your videos are going to live on YouTube, you know that everything is permitted. They're not going to get flagged if you take music or audio from there. But most of it is also usable off of YouTube. You might just need to have some attribution, or some don't have any attribution at all. That is what I used up until I found Envato. Now I just use Envato. But that is another really great free service that you could use to get started. And this is just a reminder again, if you liked anything that I talked about, I'm gonna link everything down below. Feel free to look all through the description. It's gonna have tons of links to all the content that I referenced. And that is the end of creating the video. By now, you will have a totally completed and finished, good-looking, high quality video ready to be pushed out. And that brings us to step 6, post and publish your content. Obviously, you will upload to your desired platform. I would highly recommend double and triple checking your title and your thumbnail, and then hit publish. Now, that's not the only thing in this step, because there is still more that goes into pushing out your video. This is where your marketing and distribution plan are going to come together. Do you have an email list that you want to push this out to? Are you going to post it on your website? Make sure that you don't stumble on this step so you can do your past self-service and justice for all the work that you've done to get to this point. The last thing you want to do when you've spent dozens of hours on a video is to put it on Vimeo, not do anything with it, and have it get 2 views. A lot of videos don't have views, not because they're bad videos, but because the person creating them didn't think about how the audience is going to find that content. Like I said, if you already have a network, use that. Push it out to your personal Facebook, push it out on all your professional social medias, push it out to your client list. That is a great way to get started. Hopefully through your title and your concept, you also have created something that a cold audience is going to be interested in viewing. Another thing you can do that I've kind of mentioned is you can repurpose this content into an infographic or some other form of media that you can then push out to link back to the video. For example, with this video, I could make an infographic called 6 Steps to Create Great Videos This Year. And I could put that infographic on Pinterest and get it to a totally new audience. Or I can put it on Instagram and use a bunch of hashtags to try to get people in that way. This really depends on your content and where your audience lives, so make sure that you are doing that justice. On that note, how did you find this video? Leave a comment saying where you came from and why you decided to click on it, so I can then take that information and make more videos sharing what's working and maybe what's not working. This way we can kind of work together to understand the system, the algorithm, the bigger picture of how this all comes together so that we can all make better content. Because if you haven't guessed it, my goal at the end of the day is to serve value to you, the viewer. That is it for this video. I hope you got something out of it. If you're interested in seeing more content like this, please subscribe, stick around, and leave a comment letting me know what kind of things you would want to know more about. If there's something that I just mentioned that you want more info on, let me know. Be sure to come back to keep learning how to get better with making content.